Man, I had a deal fall through. Oh, only one today?
Because I'm in the business of building relationships rather than quick transactions.
Thankful we talked about Fat Ari. He's super opinionated. He's very hardcore, but man, he inspired me.
People will ask, well, what do you have to do to become successful? Like, how do you have 14 deals pending? And it's not what I do, it's what I don't do.
I don't want to go to a therapist. So, ready to start?
Ready when you are. I was born ready.
All right, so we've got Ari in the studio today, so appreciate you coming in, man.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
So I think it was about 10 days ago you posted on your Instagram that you had 14 pending, and that's how I feel like I get most of the guests on the podcast. Is it's usually something cool that I see on Instagram, and I'm like, hey, I think we need to bring him in, and he needs to speak to the world. And so 14 pending. So let's talk that through. How does someone, Ari, have 14 pending right now?
Well, I'm going to stop you right there because 14 pending turned into probably 11. I had 2 deals fall out of contract in one day, and then I had another deal closed, thankfully. So 11. And I feel like on social media, no one talks about the deals that fall out. No one talks about the failures. And so I just wanted to address that on here. Is like, that's life, that's real estate. But the thing is we just stack those and we move on, right? You do your absolute best, you learn from it, you move on, and you have more deals pending in the pipeline, so it shouldn't hurt. That's the mentality.
So do you feel as the same way I feel, where when somebody calls me and they're like, man, I had a deal fall through, I'm almost to the point anymore I'm like, oh, only one today? Like, it's just the sport we play in, where when someone's like, I had a deal fall through this week, and I'm like, only one deal fell through this week? Get 2 or 3 deals that fall through. That means you're doing more deals, right?
Exactly, yeah. It honestly doesn't even bother me at all because I know I have other deals in the pipeline. And in fact, it actually makes me a better agent to my clients because when they want to back out of the deal with, let's say the house isn't the one for them, instead of me trying to persuade them otherwise that this is the best house, like, don't back out, it's a great deal, I'm just like, hey, yeah, no problem at all. If you want to back out, don't worry about it. Don't worry. We'll look at other houses. We'll make this work for you guys. We'll find exactly what you're looking for. Because I'm not attached. I know that I have other deals in the pipeline that are going to feed me. And so that actually makes me a better agent to my clients because I genuinely care about their intentions rather than mine. Whereas many other agents are trying to do whatever they can to make one deal stick when the mentality should be, let's just find more.
Yeah. I've noticed like the more you have saved in your bank and the more you have pending, the less you care about somebody proceeding. So I think that's cool. Like, I think some people can tell like somebody like needs a commission check because they're trying to like force them into something that doesn't feel like natural. And also what I've noticed is the more you have help around you helping you do this job, the more you stop like actually you just stay neutral. So when someone like backs out of a property, and they should, I'm just like, cool, because like if you're not actually the one showing the houses, it's not putting more work on you. And so it's like you just have like an assembly line that's working. And so it's like, okay, cool. So like right now, if we have like a pending transaction and someone cancels in the Binzer process and the repair process, the second someone like that's all office right there. The second someone cancels, they just call me back up. Like they're hollering back at me like, hey, Chris, it's back to you. Your job is now to get them into a home. And then once we go pending again, it goes back to them. So it's just kind of everyone's got their role and you just throw it back to them and it's just stay neutral.
Yeah.
Whether it falls through and comes
way.
back, you just wake up, do your job and just stay neutral about the whole day.
100%. And that's why that's why I like leveraging everything. Right. And some people say, oh, you're not showing the houses. Like, aren't your clients not getting as good of an experience? But in fact, it's the opposite. The fact that I'm not showing the houses, well, one, we're working on my client's schedule rather than mine. So if I'm not available for a showing, doesn't matter. I have people, 24/7 lined up to show houses for me. So the client's getting to see homes when they want to see them. And if a deal for some reason falls apart, I'm not emotionally attached to it because I'm not burdened by now having to show them another 12 homes so they find the one they want. I have a team in place to do that. And so, if they back out, they want to see more homes, no problem at all. Let's do it. Right. So exactly what you said there, the leverage and the business that we've built has actually enabled our clients to have a better experience.
So right now, when you get a client who wants to look at properties, is that your team who's showing them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you paying them a percentage of the deal to show them, or are you paying them like per door?
It's per door.
Per door? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's unique, man. I think a lot of people listening, they're attached to a model, and I'm a part of it. Meaning I was a part of it. I was attached to a model where I thought somebody had to get like 40 or 50% of the transaction. And so you found out, I think, that the hardest part, or the most time consuming part, is the showing of the homes, not the actual transaction. So once it goes pending, then where does that go from there? Like transaction coordinator?
Yeah, transaction coordinator does like most of the back end. She opens escrow, really writes up pretty much all the documents. I just tell her what to put in documents. So like my job in the transaction is to make it as smooth and seamless as possible and get my clients the absolute best deal, right? And so I'm the one controlling that, the negotiations especially. Like that's really my main expertise. And then obviously, I do show up to the inspections. I want to be present for that, as that is something major, especially for a first-time home buyer. And yeah, from there, pretty much everything else is leveraged out, giving my clients the best experience, helping me buy back my time. Because if it weren't for that, there's no way that I would have 12 pending right now. And I give tons of props to you and Dave for teaching me that model, because like you said earlier, a lot of people are stuck to the business model where they dish out a client to the team member and they're splitting it 50% just for another agent to show some houses, right? And so I was taught early on by you guys is you don't have to do it that way. It could just be a flat fee you pay them per door. That way, they're winning, I'm winning, everyone's winning. It's just a win-win, and I'm not giving up half my commission.
How do you set up the expectations properly where your clients feel like that's the way it should be?
Yeah, great question. I use the pilot analogy that I think Dave coined or he taught us, but really, I get them on a Zoom call where I set expectations and then I provide value of what's going on in the market, how a transaction actually looks like, how we can negotiate the best deal. But on that Zoom call, that's where I'm setting the expectation that I'm not necessarily the one to show homes. And how I set that expectation is I give them the analogy, hey, if you go on a plane, there's a pilot in the cockpit, and the pilot's main job is to get the plane from A to Z successfully without crashing, right? And in the transaction process, I'm your pilot. My main job is to negotiate you the best deal possible with the right house and make sure this process is extremely seamless, right? But when you're on a plane and you need a refill on your cocktail, the pilot isn't the one to, refill your drink, or else what's going to happen? The whole plane's going to crash, right? And so same in the transaction process. When you want to go see a house, I have showing partners available for you from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day. That way, we're seeing homes on your schedule instead of mine. And this is super crucial because as the market starts to heat up, there are going to be properties that get multiple offers. And if for some reason I'm unavailable because, let's say it's my brother's birthday and I'm celebrating it, I don't want to be able to miss that showing. I don't want you to miss out on the house. And so this gives us the opportunity to create a win-win scenario where you're viewing the house on your terms and when you want to, right? And then when you're on a plane, there's also the air traffic control, right? And so my air traffic control is my assistant, Angie. She makes sure that all the documents are being uploaded in time, that escrow is being open, and really that we're hitting all the deadlines. And so the process is extremely, extremely smooth, just as it should be. And I always compare it to the scattered agent, right? Because most agents are doing everything in their real estate business. And so that's why agents have such a bad reputation, is because they're split in so many angles and they don't have enough time to do everything. And they get overwhelmed and the process falls apart. So when you start to run your real estate business like an actual business, that's when not only you see success, but the clients are getting the absolute best service. And I think it really just comes down to setting the proper expectation, because if I don't set that expectation and Sally hits me up and says, hey, Ari, can we go see this house? And I say, hey, yeah, my team member will meet you there at 5 p.m. She might get a little offended. She's like, why aren't you meeting me there? Right. So it all comes down to setting those proper expectations, which it is scripted at the end of the day, and it takes practice to know how to say it the right way to where the client sees the benefit in it. And, I'm blessed to have mentorship that has taught me to do it the right way. And that's the only reason I've been able to scale, is by delegating.
Yeah, I like how you said, setting the proper expectations. Like anybody listening to this podcast can tell that you clearly know how to speak. That's something like a communication is something that people need to work on, like how to effectively communicate what you want to somebody. And that's how you're getting them to trust your process, is because, and is that done? Do you ever do those in person, or is like your consultations always Zoom?
I'd say 90% of the time they're over Zoom.
Do you follow, are you following like a slide deck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I originally joined EXP, you and Dave hooked me up with that slide deck that I've been using since. I made some minor edits, put my logo in there and, some extra slides that I thought would, gear more towards my brand. But overall, it's literally that slide deck you provided me, and I've been using it since. My clients absolutely love it. They're like, Ari, I've never seen a real estate agent who goes this in depth on the actual process, because most agents will walk their clients through the process during the actual process. And I tell my clients, hey, let's be proactive rather than reactive. And let me walk you through the entire process ahead of time. That way you know what you're getting into and you have a good understanding of the process. And once we're going through the process, I'm going to remind you of everything. That way, we're hitting all the check boxes that we should, and you're in full alignment. So yeah, it's really simple. And, structuring my business this way to where I'm meeting clients over Zoom, and, the showings are leveraged and delegated. I have a transaction coordinator in the back end. I've actually enjoyed working with buyers more than I have with sellers, because with sellers, you got to drive to the house, you got to run the comps, you got to do all this additional stuff. With buyers, it's really, my expertise comes in when it's negotiation time, which is exactly what I love to do. Like every single time I get my clients the absolute best deal possible. And I also guarantee them that they will never have to pay me if I'm representing them as a buyer's agent, because I'm able to negotiate my compensation every single time. And if I don't, for some reason, which almost never happens, I'll take the hit, because I'm in the business of building relationships rather than quick transactions.
Do you ever like have anybody who says, no, I don't want to do a consultation, but you feel that they're still going to buy a house, and you just proceed to the next step because you don't want to be the reason there's too much friction? I ask that because I found that there's some people who they're super savvy with buying a house. They've been through the process in Arizona in the last few years. I can have the argument on why they need to go through it again, because we're in a new market, right? Or you're using a different realtor. That's me. There's different expectations. But do you have people that, after you say this is what I want to do and the reason why, that they say, no, I'm good?
Yeah, not often, but sometimes. And when it does happen, I say, listen, no worries at all. And then I still proceed with setting the expectations that I'm not necessarily always going to be the one to show the properties, right? So doesn't matter whether I do a consultation or not, proper expectations have to be set, and they always are. That way they're in full alignment with, the way we operate.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am now, because there are some people who, and maybe it's a limiting belief, I'm cool with that, I'll figure it out. But there are some people where I feel like the consultation is causing a little bit too much friction, where they might go to another realtor. So like, for example, got a referral a few weeks ago. Lady's pretty savvy, referral from out of state. And she's talking about flying in, and she's like, I'm going to look at the houses I want to see and buy one. I was like, how long are you going to be in Arizona? Long as it takes to find a house, and she's like, I just want to look at these houses and I'll find one. And so I did do a consultation with her. And so yesterday I was teaching a class, and she was flying in yesterday. And so when she landed, she went out and looked at houses. And after I got out of the class, she looked at eight houses. She liked two of them. Now we're doing this podcast. She just looked at her favorite two before this podcast, and she's already hit me up, and she's like, hey, I like this one. So I messaged her, hey, I'm going to make an offer when I'm done with my next meeting, which is this. And so I feel like whenever somebody doesn't want to do the consultation, I can tell it's adding too much friction. I've got the highlight reel, and it's just kind of on the phone. Like, okay, cool. Like, like when you fly in, just want to let you know, like, I do have a very busy schedule, but never too busy for you. So when you fly in, I don't know what days those are, but text me over what days you're going to be in town. If I have some meetings that I'm going to be in, which I probably will, I have some people that are going to be getting into the properties. And when they go look at those properties with you that day, when you're done, I'm going to follow up with you, talk very, very high level with you about those properties. Which one specifically did you like? Which one you like, I'll comp that for you, talk high level. And I always use the word high level. I'm always wanting them to know, like, and it's kind of just planted throughout the process. Like, oh, I'm the one who talks high level. And if I just keep saying that, planting that seed, they're thinking, oh, well, I only want to talk to Chris high level. And so therefore, not saying anybody on my team's the low level, but it's putting me at a spot where I can still have room to have a calendar of other things, but still let them know, hey, I'm going to be on the phone with you and talk high level. And so with her, like to go under contract like that, I couldn't get the consultation because I thought I was adding too much friction. But still, we're going to go under contract tonight. It still worked out the way it needs to. I still feel there are some people that even in the pending process, there can be some curveballs because we didn't get to go through the whole process up front. But I also look at that. I'm like, it's the pending process now. That's usually more on my office, not me. And so that's not what I'm as concerned about. I'm more concerned about my schedule in the day and trying to keep the ship going, and not having to be attached to everything.
Yeah, I really love that you built your business that way, and you've taught, me and many others to do the same thing, because to be able to, teach a class to other agents while you have a showing partner, showing homes to your clients, and now doing this podcast while you still have your back end taking care of all your other deals, like that is beautiful. And I genuinely think a lot of agents, one, either don't know that that's even a possibility, which I didn't know was a possibility before I met you, but two, either know it's a possibility, but are too scared to take that leap because they think, oh, well, I only have like 2 buyers right now. Like it doesn't make sense to pay someone and delegate that. But really the truth is you're always going to be stuck at 2 buyers until you figure out how to get that off your plate, delegate it. That way you can now buy back that time and continue to prospect and bring in more business. Now, might not be for everyone, right? Because some people are fine with, having 1 or 2 clients at a time. But for someone who's actually looking to scale their business and grow it, or even just like buy back their time so they can use that time and go on a vacation for once, or spend more time with their kids or with their family, right? It is completely necessary to have some kind of process in place to where you're buying back your time and freeing yourself up. That way you can actually live life and give your clients a better experience at the same time. So, Chris, in your opinion, why do you think that so many agents struggle with delegation?
I think it's because they don't have enough that they're trying to accomplish in the day that's super important. And I'm going to say this so respectfully. I hope so. I hope this doesn't come off in a bad way at all, but I've got so many big things that I want to do that, like yesterday, for example, I was teaching that class, right? There was 60 people who registered for that class. You know what was interesting is I get an Instagram message before and it says, hey, I can't come to your class. I got to write a contract on a house. And all I could think of in my head, I did say something to her. And I said, I have a buyer flying into town today and I'm going to go still teach the class. So I hope that one day I can sit down with you and teach you leverage. And that's where I don't know if I went too far, but people know I am always going to tell you what I think. And sometimes they're going to be like, oh man, that's a little hard. That's a little rough. But like, I have good intentions because I really do genuinely want them to know, like, you could go learn today and also get that done. But you know what would have been more interesting is what I thought later. And I'm glad I didn't say this. Gosh, I'm so glad I didn't say this. I paused. But I was thinking, what would have been more interesting is for me to message her back and be like, oh, I have a buyer flying in today, so I was going to message you and say I couldn't attend the class. You know what I mean? All you really did was tell me that like this wasn't an important class, which I don't have the ego where I care that much, right? I'm not saying I'm not important. You just messaged me to say like, hey, I have more important things than what was on my calendar today to go do. And so I'm not going. And so I don't know if I would have said back to her, like, what if I would have messaged everyone yesterday that was going to the class and said, hey guys, I'm so sorry. A buyer is flying in today. And I know you guys you signed up all, and I know I planned all this and I reserved the room and you guys were all expecting to learn from me, but a buyer flew in today. And so I am so sorry to disappoint all of you guys, but no one's learning today. My apologies, my bad. But no, so that's to answer your question. I know that I'm trying to always have a busy life. Dude, I have a podcast and I've got to do 2 of those on Fridays, and I've got classes that I'm preparing for. I got Zoom coachings where I'm jumping on and helping people. I've got 20 rental properties that I got to do. I've got to get on a meeting with my assistant and talk about those. I've got a personal life. I want to hang out with my wife all the time. I want to go on vacations all the time. So I think it's like I woke up one day, bro, and said, or I should say I met Dave. Like I met Dave, and it was like someone who allowed me for the first time to say, can't you you do it all? And then I started sitting back and I'm like, well, can you do it all? Like, Do you have to be the guy who sells 150 homes and gets divorced, or you're fat? Or do you have to be the guy who has like a really good relationship with their family and a good personal life, but your business sucks? You know, and I think some people are like trading, and I'm like, just go try to have more. And so I don't know if that even answered your questions, but I know it's interesting to me that like I already know that almost every day moving forward for the rest of my life that I'm going to be busy. Yeah. Like, cause it's already, there's so many stuff already booked that like 5 buyers this month wanting to go look at houses. I have to have a setup for it, because what am I going to do? Just say like, I'm not going to accomplish anything else. I'm not going to the gym, not doing date nights, not going to church, not going to teach classes, not doing the podcast, because I got to sit 24/7 and just sit right here and just wait for the next buyer to want to go look at houses. I'm on call. I'm on call, world. I'm ready. Right? So it's like you have to have a structure if you're saying, I want to go do 40 other cool things and impact the world and try to change things. And yes. So, and then also, bro, I think sometimes what's the most important thing to some people, and I know I'm going long-winded with this, but you asked, I think some people, their most important thing in their day is the least important in my day. And gosh, I don't know how to say that in any other way where it doesn't sound bad, but it's Dave taught me that just because there's value on that doesn't mean it's your value. So for example, like showing homes is very, very valuable. Like a client has to get into a home that's very, very valuable. But it doesn't have to be valuable to me. But meaning like it's got to be valuable to somebody on my team, right? Like I've got to have somebody who knows that that's valuable and it gets done. But like that's not what I have to do in the day. And so I don't know. Like that's my opinion.
Well, I've noticed the highest producers have the highest amount of input, and that's why they have such a strong output, right? But the thing is if you stopped working today, you would still have a higher input than 99.9% of realtors because of the systems you have set up around you. Homes are still getting shown, offers are still getting written, buyers and sellers are still getting their video updates because of the leverage you've built around you and the team you've built, right? And I think that's just very powerful to just stop for a second and think about, because agents will be like, well, I work 10 hours today. I work my ass off. You know, I do all this. How do you have, you know, so many more in the pipeline than I do, and you work 3 hours less a day, right? It's because our input is higher than theirs, even though they're working more, right? And it's because of the systems we have built around us to get to exactly where we are. And I think that's very powerful for people to just like sit back, think about, and ask themselves, okay, how can I build systems? And the first answer I'd give to that question is figure out exactly, well, first of all, write down exactly what you do in a day, and then figure out which ones you can delegate off your plate to someone else. And just keep doing that until you've built literally an organization around yourself to where clients are getting fulfilled and your input is already higher than, you know, you working 10 hours a day to get there. So I think that's really important. And then also I wanted to comment on the fact when you said you were teaching that class and homes were still getting shown, and, you know, obviously you could have said, guys, a buyer flew in town, you know, I got to run, I can't do this class. I think people are too reactive, right? Buyer comes into town, they stop everything they're doing to react to that buyer, right? Whereas the most successful people are very proactive. Like they saw that ahead of time, they built a system around it, and now that system is running on autopilot, right? And we can even take this concept down to like the most granular level, right? Think about it. Like you pull out, let's say you get a notification on your phone, right? I'm in a podcast right now. I'm in a conversation. If I got a notification on my phone and I said, Chris, hold on, I got to respond. Like that would be extremely reactive of me, right? But being able to put that to the side, focus on our conversation, and know that that's going to be handled later is really the way people should operate, because they get something that pulls them in like multiple directions and they never get anything done. And they wonder why their day is so long-winded without getting really anything done. And so I think it's important to always ask yourself for anything you do, was this reactive or was this proactive?
Well, I mean, think it through other jobs. So you don't follow football. I know we're going to talk about that later because you had some social media posts that I want to talk about. But Super Bowl's going down, right?
What's that?
the Super so the Super Bowl is going down, right? Do you see, like, does the quarterback have like his phone in his back pocket and he's like, blue 22, huh, huh. Oh, hold up. I'm in a group text. Hold up. You know what I mean? No, like, dialed, focused. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I don't know what team it is, but it's a basketball team. And they said that they were noticing that their like numbers were going down. And then so they also noticed in the locker room at halftime, they would check their phones in the locker room. And they were like seeing people talk about how they were playing at halftime. And so that, like, and everyone's just a hater, you know, like, oh man, he sucks, can't make the basket, having a terrible. And it was like, it was getting into their head. And so they were telling him now, like, hey, no more phones at halftime. Like, you don't need an update from the world telling you how bad you suck, you know, because there's always a hater no matter how good you are. And so I just look at that like your surgeon. Like, I'm getting like, if I get eye surgery, do I want that guy to be like, if I saw my surgeon and he just like, you know, like right before he's just like texting, like, hold up, like, I'm gonna let my wife know. Hold
in the
up.
middle of your surgery.
In the middle of the surgery, it's like you can hear us ding, ding, and he's like, hold up. I don't know. Maybe someone could look at me and be like, hey, chill, Chris. You're not that important. But I don't know. Somewhere I think that I am, right? Like, that class was super important to me. This podcast is super important to me. When I'm on a Zoom call one-on-one with somebody, it's super important to me. Like, when we do our Tuesday Zooms, bro, I try to be the one. Like, I have people who will text me. Like, I'll get off that Tuesday Zoom with 27 texts. People are hitting me up in there and they're like, hey, can I go next and talk? And someone's like, hey, I don't know the password to get in. And none of them get any messages because I am like, I've told everyone, like, I'm dialed. You know what I mean? Like, these are my, like, this is my crew. Like, I'm showing up today. I don't want to be the guy on the side. I ain't in the chat on the Zoom, like, joking. I turn off the chat. When you guys are all like, no, like, oh, Chris, someone's in the chat. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you guys answer that. Like, I don't want to even focus on the chat. To me, that's just another, like, that's just another form of text messaging. And I've seen people talking on the Zooms and they see the chats and it kind of stalls them because they're like, they're wanting to get a play-by-play of questions, or they want to know, like, they're trying to see, like, what are people talking about, why I'm doing this. And I can tell that they're getting distracted and they don't stay on point. They don't have passion anymore because they're like, they're trying to tell you something with passion. And then they start getting a tweet because they're like, oh, wait, they care. And then someone says a joke or someone says something like, oh, well, that didn't make sense. And I'm like, I don't want that review right now. Like, I'll take the review later when I'm analyzing film on Monday of the game on Sunday, but I don't want the play-by-play. I'm focused. And so, once again, long answer, but I'm like, take your stuff with some intensity. Like, if you're trying to go on a mission to solve anything big or you have high goals, that should be your Tuesday. Someone could be like, oh, Chris, Tuesday, 8 a.m., it's just a Zoom, bro. No. Like, that's a Zoom. That's like, there's 70 people on there that are trying to better their lives, change people around them life. Like, that's super important to me. Like,
It's
I don't want to be in a,
than most people like deem it to be. Like, people are on that call to get help. Like, a lot of people are struggling. They're like, okay, how can I better my business? So the fact that you take it seriously, like, I admire that. And I think that's why so many agents have partnered with you at EXP, because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And clearly, like, you take your shit seriously, and that's admirable. And, you know, back to the analogy of the sports teams,
Yeah.
which, you know, I don't watch sports on the record, but
we know.
yeah, I've never watched any of those sports, but I know how they go because I used to play sports, right? And so before a basketball game, what are the players doing? Well, they're warming up, right? And they're practicing right before the game. And I think too many people forget that part. They look at real estate. They're like, oh, you know, like, let me just make the cold call really quick. But like, they forget the part where you need to train for hours and hours and hours beforehand. And people just treat it like, you know, it's just a call or it's just showing up. But the truth is it takes so much more. Like, it takes intensity. Like, the most successful agents, they treat this business like a game. Like, it's competitive and there's stakes on the line. And so that's something that I always tell my team is, guys, like, practice, treat it like your life depends on it, because it does. And people will track other people's stats more than they track their own, right? Like, they'll be tracking the football player who doesn't know them, doesn't give a shit about them. If they die tomorrow, the football player wouldn't even know. But they're tracking every single game for hours, and they're looking at the scorecard and the points, and they know who that player is best friends with, and they know who that player is marrying or in bed with. I'm like, dude, who gives a shit? Focus on yourself. Do you know how much money is in your bank? No. Do you know what your body fat percentage is? No. Do you know how many people you've impacted? No. You don't know shit about yourself. Why don't you focus on yourself? But no, they'll watch Netflix right before bed instead of reading a book. They'll eat the slice of pizza instead of eating the steak. They'll listen to Logan Paul instead of listening to a productive podcast, because people don't focus on self-development. People don't want to better themselves. They say they do, but their actions don't show it. And it irritates me. I'm like, dude, if everyone just focused on bettering themselves, this world would be a better place.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. Like on the sports stuff, man, I'm gonna let you know. Like I still like, so I've been through evolutions of this, but so I want to go through this with you because we've talked about this before. But where I got to with it was, I'll still on a Sunday watch football games, right? Like if I'm just chilling, like that is my relaxation.
Sure.
So like if I'm off that day, but I used to like put in my calendar the Cardinals games. Like I would put the time, like is it at 10 o'clock today? Is it 1 o'clock today? Or is it the night game? And so I used to like plan my schedule around it like 7-8 years ago. One won't do that anymore. So like if I'm home chilling and a game's on, I might watch it. But like there's nothing usually planned around it where I'm like actually going to commit to that if I'm just home at home. And then something I went through probably like 6 years ago was, I don't know where it was, bro, and there's no judgment in this. I'm just speaking to me or what I went through is I stopped being able to wear like a team hat. I just all of a sudden got to a point where I'm like, what am I doing? Okay. And then I was like, and before the team hat, I was like, what am I? I'd have I'd go to a Suns game and I'd have a jersey on. I'm like, what am I, 12? You know what I mean? I'm 20 years older than the dude playing. I almost started to get like embarrassed because I'm like, what am I?
You're wearing another man's name on your back and your wife is too. Like, yo, what?
Well, no, dude, I'm being serious. It's so.
Yeah.
And dude, I don't want anybody listening to this to think like, dude, do whatever you want. I'm talking about my journey is,
yeah,
I got to a point where I started thinking of that. I'm like, no, I'm Bowers. My wife, like I go home and my wife's there. Like I want to provide for her and I want her to be like, hey, we're Bowers. Like I don't be walking in the house wearing like other man's jersey on my, and so it was like, I don't want to wear a team's hat anymore. And so I remember I was going to a game, a Suns game probably like 7-8 months ago. And the person asked me like, hey, do you want me to pick you up a jersey? And I was like, no. And then I gave him my statement.
But it's signed, Chris.
I gave him my statement. He's like, oh, you're one of those people kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm going to go to the game. I'll still go to the game. I love the game. I shouldn't say I love the game. I like going to the games. Sure. Okay. But like, I will be the guy still wearing my Lululemon shirt. Sure, yeah.
And on the record, like I have nothing against, watching sports. Well, I have a little against it, but what I really have against is like people tracking every single move that the player does. Like if you want to watch a basketball game, football game here and there, cool. Like enjoy yourself. Do what makes you feel good at the end of the day. But when your life, a portion of your life is dedicated tracking someone else's who doesn't know you, who doesn't love you, who doesn't respect you, who knows nothing about you, it's pointless. It's a waste of life. And so, that's always been my mentality even since I was a kid. Like I've always played the sports. People are like, oh, did you watch the game? I'm like, why would I sit on a couch and watch it when I can play it? Right? Like I want to track my own stats. I want to track my game. And so, people can get offended at that, but that's my opinion. And I would say that's part of why I'm at where I'm at today is I just focus on myself and the people who love me. And I don't mind wearing someone else's name on my back or on a hat, but that someone is either going to be my own name or it's going to be someone who's had a massive impact on my life, right? Mentors, colleagues, like friends of mine, like people who actually I love, respect, and have impacted me, right? So that's my take, and I'm going to follow that till the day I die.
Yeah, even like with fantasy sports, I've never really did it. One time, my buddy probably like 12 years ago was like, hey, do you want to get this basketball fantasy sports league? And I was like, not really. I ended up doing it. The very first game, I didn't know how to use the website. And he's like, dude, you benched everybody, did you know? And I'm like, I don't know how to use the website, dude. I only did it because I'm your friend. He's like, everyone's benched. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not even going to go to my computer to change it. Anyways, he took over my account and he finished it out. I think I got like second or third. So I just looked at it. I'm like, well, I own the team, and you were the general manager of my fantasy football league. I was like, boss, right? But even that, and I've never really did it, but I've also seen a lot of people around me do it, and I always think I'm like, man, I don't want to like play fantasy sports. Like real life's super cool, you know. Like I want to make sure that would my wife, when she's with her 6 friends, pick me to be in like would she pick me to be in like, if they all had like if all the ladies that were together like pick like who's the husband they would want, you know, based on like what they're doing, like would she put me in? Like if there was 6 options and I was the one, like the stats, like, you know, this is what he's doing, like would she put me in? And so I started looking at it like, why would we go to fantasy sports when, you know, we have like a game that we're playing here, like we have the real estate game we're in, or the personal game of health, or your net worth, or there's just so many things to do. Now, here's what I also want to say, because I don't ever want anybody to think I'm judgy, because I'm actually not. This podcast is more of me just talk, like this is how I talk to myself. And so I decided, here's something that was healthy for me. I don't know if it will be for you, but I decided everyone wastes their time. Maybe you don't, bro. You're dialed. I'm just sometimes dialed.
Everyone wastes time.
Everyone wastes time in their own way, and everybody wastes money in their own way. Yeah. And so like there's some people who could be like, dude, you waste money on that. And I'm like, I don't care. Like that's what I do then. Or someone could be like, dude, you waste time doing that. But like I love doing that. You know, like someone could be like, hey, you sitting by your pool for an hour on Sunday and listening to like Leonard Skinner, that's a waste of time. And I'm like, well, I like it, therefore it's my waste of time. So I want everyone to know, like, this is how I talk to myself, so there's no judgment that I'm just talking about how I process my life. But I also decided that I don't get in anybody's business, meaning cool. Like I'm not going to, when I start seeing people, if I ever get the feeling of like, man, that's a waste of time, I instantly go to me and I'm like, they probably would look at what I'm doing right now and be a waste of time. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe they bought that. They're probably looking at me like, so this is all me talking.
I totally agree. And I'm very big on like not judging. I just give my opinion too, because I'm raw and real. I'm just going to speak my truth. But like if someone genuinely gets enjoyment from doing something that I would find stupid, like, dude, good for them. Like as long as it's not consuming their life. And, you know, if they came to me for help and they're like, Ari, like, you know, I need help with this, this, and this. And I broke down what their day-to-day looks like, and they're spending 3 hours watching sports, and say, hey, you're stupid. Like, stop watching sports and swap it with something that's productive. Or, you know, maybe limit that to 1 hour or something that makes sense, right? So I think it's just important for, one, everyone have their own source of like leisure, because it's necessary. We're human. But 2, you know, have moderation around it and balance. And, you know, I think everything should be moderated, even food, like healthy food. Anything healthy should be moderated. So I'm a big believer in that.
So do you think that like you're very into fitness? Do you feel like that is a reason why you're successful at real estate? Or I mean, is there like a common denominator to that?
I think it helped. I think fitness was like a stepping stone to real estate, because I was always a fat kid, especially during COVID. I gained a lot of weight. I was probably 35, 40 pounds heavier than I should have been. And then within 9 months, I lost all that, had the 6-pack. And I guess subconsciously, I probably thought to myself, like, wow, like I just did that. I can do whatever I want. Like I can conquer if I really just put my mind to it. And that gave me the confidence to drop out of college, go all into real estate. I genuinely don't think that if I was fit, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, because that helped me instill the discipline. So the common denominator is discipline, right? And people can have discipline in, you know, someone could be a great musician and then want to get into real estate, and I'm sure they'll do well because they've already had discipline in one aspect of their life. So I don't want to say fitness is like the end all be all, but for me personally, it did help a lot, and I think it would for anyone. And subconsciously it helps. Like if I walk into a listing appointment with a client and I'm up against someone who's overweight, my odds of winning are so much higher, just because the client subconsciously already has massive respect for me, whether they know it or not. They just do, because like, this guy takes care of himself. He's going to take care of me. The fat guy, I doubt it. He can't even take care of himself. He's drinking 2 Cokes a day and watching Netflix, eating popcorn, right? Like he's not going to sell my house, right? And that's the truth. that's really, really the truth. So, I think it's important for people to get their health in line. It really
And
is.
and I so respect you for that. So you being hardcore on that statement, I'm your audience. So as much as I just went on a rant about what I think, and I just said, hey, I wasn't judging, I was telling you the things I went through. Okay. I'm going to say that now. I'm going to go on the vulnerable side. Okay. So like, the vulnerable side is you post your workouts and stuff and you're in really good shape. And me being 41 now and you being 21, I'm now looking at you and I'm like, dang, dude, like he not only had like 14 pending last week, but I see him at the gym, cold plunging, sauna, working out. I see on your stories every morning, like you motivate me. So as much as like you sometimes might think, and I don't know if you do this, probably not, but if you're ever thinking like, man, there's someone who probably is getting like, what if someone's getting offended by my stuff? They are. But dude, I watch your stuff every day and I'm your audience. I'm totally inspired by what you're doing. And it's made me think, and what you just said is exactly how I feel. I have been to the beach more times than ever where I have felt insecure because I'm just like, man, like I've been on trips to Mexico with like some of my wife's friends, and there's a few of them that are super fit, and I'm just like, I think I'm good. Like I think I'm good here. Like I'm probably gonna just chill over here with my tank top on because it's what you just said, dude. It's like like if you go on vacation at the beach and you see somebody like eating bad or drinking,
Mhm.
if they're in really good shape, you're like, oh, they're on vacation. This is their vacation. Like this is how they treat their 4 days. But if you see someone who's chunk like me on vacation and you're eating nachos and drinking a beer, then you're like, oh, that's just how they live their life. And now they're on vacation, they're doing it more. You get what I'm saying? It's like that. I think when you look at somebody, it just, you can see on them like, oh, I know what they've been doing the last 6 months. And there's, in business, it's hard because we don't walk around with our bank accounts on like the amount on our shirt, like our net worth. But yet our fitness, you can see it. So you can almost be like, oh, I know what that person's actions are Tuesday at 8 a.m. Or like, I know what they're doing Wednesday at 9 p.m. Or I know, Chris, I can tell you ate chips and salsa last night. Like you probably did you eat 3 bowls of chips and salsa, Chris? And I'm like, I did. You did? Yep. And I bet you drank 2 Coca-Colas. I'm like, uh-huh. Like, tell me more. What else do you know about me? Because they know, right? There's no way you can run from that. Like your fitness exposes you, in my opinion. And so I'm being very vulnerable right now. That's what I'm going through. That's why I'm on like day 17 of 75 hard, is because I watch your stuff and I'm like, yeah, he's hardcore. He's super opinionated. He's very hardcore. Probably ruffled some feathers, but man, he inspired me. So that's why I really enjoy hanging out with you, because even though it might like ruffle, and dude, do you know how many people will like listen to this podcast and just think like, well, wow, and they were on their high horse.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so I wanted to say right there, like, no, I don't think me calling myself a chunk and that I ate 3 bowls of chips and salsa as me being on a high horse. I think that was very vulnerable. And so I'm hopeful that in 6 months to a year that I can play this back and be in better shape at 42 and be like, hey, my homie Ari, like, love me enough to go show his discipline on social. And I watched it and I respect that guy and I'm so thankful. So you'd be a part of that journey.
One, you're not a chunk. Two, I really respect you for your discipline and looking at maybe someone who's more fit than you and getting inspired by it rather than like envious or hurt. It's funny because a few days ago when the Super Bowl was happening, by the way, I didn't even know what teams were playing for the Super Bowl. Was it the Suns versus like the Raiders or like
It
I don't
was,
know
dude.
who it was.
It
Like
was.
genuinely. I heard something about like a flying eagle. I don't know. Anyway, when I posted that video of like my controversial take on why I don't watch the Super Bowl or really any sports in general, I had a DM request and I opened it and it was this like account that someone created, I think just to DM me. Like it had like 0 followers and they're like, Ari, like, you know, I don't know why you're hating on the Super Bowl. Like all your posts make me feel so guilty that like I'm not in the gym and I'm not working out. Like, why don't you just like suffocate in your cold plunge? I was like, holy crap. Like that's one, that's deep, but two, the fact that people are getting almost like insecure by my posts where I'm just showing my daily life and my disciplines and things that I enjoy doing is
On them.
it's one, it's on them, but two, the reason for me posting is to inspire people and show them that they could also be doing the same thing and working out and bettering their lives, and that it's totally possible even when you're running like a very busy company. And the people like you who get inspired, I love to hear that because that's the reason I post in the first place. And then the people who feel down about it or envious or insecure, like, I just wish those people a lot of love, and I hope God guides them the right direction, because they have a lot of work that they need to do if they're feeling insecure by someone posting their workouts, like, genuinely.
Do you know where the disconnect is, I think?
What?
The disconnect, I think, my opinion is they don't know that you used to be, what your words, fat.
Sure. Yeah.
So you said it, not me. I don't want anybody to think I called him the fat kid.
No, I was a fat
You said
ass.
you were the fat kid, right?
Yeah.
And so like I know that. So I know that, and I know what you look like now, and I'm like looking at your discipline. I'm like, oh my gosh, like he's told me, and he's showed me pictures, and I know where he's at now. Dude, mad props. It's like the person who has no business starts going to a class, learning somebody who does business, and all of a sudden they're doing a lot of business. You give that person respect, 'cause you're like, hey, I know where you were at. You said you wanted help. I gave you the help, and now you're balling out. So that's super cool to see. So I don't think that they're connecting. So that's why you see on a lot of fitness people's stuff, you know, if you just follow an account and all of a sudden you just see them ripped and they're super disciplined, those ones that usually are trying to sell something to someone, you're not. Yeah. Someone's trying to sell something to someone, they've got to go through like the hero's journey. So every like 2 weeks, they'll post like my before and after. So they realize like, oh my gosh, like I'm connecting now. Like I've just seen this guy disciplined. It gets a less like judgmental to them, not you, keep doing you. It gets less judgmental to them when you're like, oh my gosh, they overcame. Right. So they see that's why every once in a while I'll post my 5 real estate photos when I was 22, where I, you know, just the skater kid with long hair. And it's like, it's 5 photos I have, the 4 I flunked and the 1 I passed. I'll post those every once in a while on my stories, just because most of my Instagram is just flexing, right? Like it's just a lot of like, close this guy joined our company, bought this house. So I always like to go back to, hey, I was just that 22-year-old. That 22-year-old kid that just, you know, was just trying to find his way. And I just went to a lot of classes, and I went to a lot of training, and I got mentors, and I just kept trying harder, and I fell and I tried harder and just kept trying harder. And you just wake up and you're like, okay, cool, accomplished something kind of cool. Nowhere near I want to be. But so that's what I wanted to say to you, is that I think that they don't, man, you post, like I bet you tomorrow, anybody who's ever had a thought that's watched your stories that thought like, he's a little judgy, post your fat kid photo tomorrow and just leave it there and be like, put the date, and they're going to look at that and they're going to be like, wait, that was only how many years ago?
4.
There you go. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, that was only 4 years ago. Yeah. Oh, I thought that kid was born with abs. No. You know, so they're just thinking right now, like, you're genetically blessed. They're thinking like, oh my gosh, he got blessed with like a, you know, a fitness mind and body. And so all of a sudden now he's just on his high horse. And so when you show them the fat kid 4 years ago, they're going to be like, wait, mad props, bro. Like now you're going to get the DMs like, whoa, good for you, dude. You got focused, man. You got dialed. That's what my thoughts are.
Yeah, I think I've posted like Fat Ari like once on my story, but I like that you said you post like young Chris Bowers multiple times. And I think that's important to remind people, because it's not just showing the wins, it's showing the L's too. Kind of like we started this podcast. Like I started this podcast talking about my L's, like how, you know, a couple deals already fell out of escrow within like a day. Right. So, yeah, I totally agree. I think it's important to do that. And not only was I fat and overweight, I was literally like the biggest stoner. Like I would smoke weed 5 times a day. I had the long, puffy, curly hair. Literally all I did was eat pizza, smoke weed, hang out with friends. I was up till like 8 a.m. I'd wake up at like 2 p.m. Dude, it was like rock bottom. And I knew I wanted nothing to do with that anymore after I got through that phase. And I think that's why I don't want to say I'm so dialed in, because I'm not. Like I could be way more dialed in, but I'm more dialed in than probably most people. It's because I've experienced the rock bottom, and I genuinely do not ever want to go there again with how I used to be. It was honestly disgusting. And so anytime I'm talking about how I'm against being fat and how I never want to be there again. It's not me calling out people. One, I'm calling people up, but two, it's more so talking to my old self, right? And I think that's important to understand is like I used to be there and I know what it's like when you're fat. I know what it's like when you're fit. And anyone who's out of shape, you're missing out on life. Like you genuinely are, because so many more doors open up just from being in shape, and so many more opportunities come in the open up as well. So I'm a big advocate of that.
I just think confidence, man.
Yeah.
Like I notice just with doing like 75 hard again, I did it once in 2023. You just start getting more confident. And I mean, you probably know me, like I'm probably super confident in certain areas of my life, right? But then you can also be like super insecure in other areas of your life. So I just think, well, now is my era to get confident in the spot that I'm not confident, because I feel like that's just going to, I feel like me getting in better shape in 1 year, I'll have improved my business, because I just feel like that little bit of insecurity I have there leaks over. And even though someone might be like, well, Chris, you're doing some really cool stuff, I know me. And so when someone else is looking at me like, hey, maybe you're doing some cool stuff, I'm looking at myself like, but I think I could do more. I think like sometimes some people, the outside world can tell you you're doing something cool, but I'm like, you really know what your potential is. And so even though that you might have higher standards than some, therefore it looks good, like sometimes you can be disappointed with yourself because like you know what your true potential is. And so if that resonates with you, then you've got to go do something about it. So maybe everybody doesn't wake up and think that, but I do. So I've woke up over the last, like, it was a month ago where I'm just like, I gotta figure this out. Like I need to be confident in this arena. Like I want a photo on Instagram where like I look in shape. And so, and that's how I view things is, well, how do I want to feel and how do I want to look? And then so now there's going to be a lot of discipline to get there. And then so the only way you can change the version that you are is by just working for it. So, but I just wanted to say props, man. Thank you for your help.
You're really good at reverse engineering your goals. Like I've noticed that. You set a big goal for yourself and then you're like, okay, what do I have to do to get there? And you break it down by like the month, week, day. Like what's your thought process around that? Like do you have any other specific things that you do when it comes to like goal setting?
What do you mean specific?
Like I say that because a lot of people set a goal and most people never achieve their goals. So it's like, what separates you? Because I've seen some goals you've set just over the last couple of years and you're pretty consistent when it comes to hitting them.
Dude, I'm just gritty. I mean, I don't know where it came from. I'm thankful I have it. I have very little chill in my life. I shouldn't say that. I go through these like, I have like these massive spurts like in the day where I'm like high, like got to get stuff done. But I do chill out, so I shouldn't say that. I think a lot, and I've come to terms, and I've always been this way. My wife sometimes is like, I don't know why you talk like this. I've come to terms that like I will expire. I really have come to terms with that, bro. Like I will expire. Like I will not be on this earth one day. And so I'm just like, man, I just don't want to be disappointed with myself. And I don't want to be 68 because I'm noticing as I get older, I'm 41. I'm noticing that you get like, I can see people like as they get older, they get more tired, they get less energy. But then and I'm like, hey, like I know some fit people that are older that don't. And so that's why I have that goal right now. Is like, hey, I don't want to get to 48, 49, 55 and just not have the energy because it was my fault. There's some times in life where like it's not your fault, like it's just health, like life happens. But like I don't want to cause it. Like I want to be my own best friend. Like I don't want to wake up at 68 and be like, your life choices were the reason you're here. And if you'd have just taken care of yourself, it's like the smoker. You know what I mean? You look at somebody who like is in bad health at a certain age and they've smoked a pack of cigarettes a day, and no judgment, but like you did that on yourself. Like I feel very bad for this, and I'm so empathetic that like that was hard and emotional, but like you did check the box that said like I did this myself, and I can still say you did it yourself, and I can still feel really bad for you. But like I don't want, and mine's not smoking, but maybe mine's the chips and salsa, right? Maybe mine's the Coca-Cola, and I just don't want to wake up at 68 and be like, when the doctor's like, hey dude, like I had a mentor, man. in my early 20s, an on stage mentor. He doesn't know who I am, right? I just listen to him all the time. It was Gary Keller. You know, I went to a lot of Keller Williams stuff, and he would say on stage, he had some of the best classes outside of real estate, man. Some of the best classes. One of these classes was called Quantum Leap. It was like how to design your life. Amazing class. And he would say, why? He would say, why do most people get to a certain age where the doctor tells them if they don't eat differently, something bad's going to happen? He's like, why do most people in life get to a point in their life where the doctor tells them if you don't change your life choices, like you're going to have a heart attack? So he's like, if you know that most people is going to have a conversation with the doctor at around 65-ish that says if you don't change your life choices, you're going to expire sooner than you should, then why wouldn't you just, instead of being on defense, why is that? That's hard. Oh man, you got to stop eating that way. You got to stop doing your activities that way. Like you got to change. Well, at 68, you've been doing it a long time. It's hard to change. Some people are just like, nope, I'm just going to keep smoking for another 2 years. I love it that much. And so he's like, hey, why don't you just act today, whatever age you are, 21, 17, 49, why don't you just act today like the doctor just had the meeting with you and was like, hey, if you don't change your life choices, like you're going to expire sooner. And so when you ask me, like, where do I achieve some of those goals? I kind of look at a lot of things like that. Like when I tried to accomplish buying a lot of houses or recruiting agents, it's always this older version of me and this younger version of me. I like what Alex Hermosi says, bro. Like he says for like therapist, and this is going to be probably super controversial, but he'll be like, I don't want to go to a therapist. Their job isn't to get me out of here. Their job is to keep me here and not give me enough. They just want to like keep me in a conversation where I have a friend. He's like, why don't you just, he said on his last podcast, why don't you just text yourself like you're your older self? I just be like, hey, this is what I'm going through. What should I do? And act like you're 68 and you're talking back to you like, hey, bro, don't do that.
That's what I do with ChatGPT.
Really? Yeah.
I don't, but
I'm just saying, like that's
it would work.
He looks.
Theoretically.
That's when he was saying that. That's kind of how I've always processed things for years. Is like I just think, hey, I'm gonna be 68, and I used to say I want 32-year-old Chris to meet 41-year-old Chris and be proud. And now I'm 41-year-old Chris, so 28-year-old Chris met him, and is he proud? Kind of, but not proud of my health. So now I'm like, well, 45-year-old Chris is out there. And so when I go up to him at 45 and I give him knuckles and I'm like, what's up, 45-year-old Chris? How are you? I want that 45-year-old Chris to merge and be like, bro, proud of you, dude. Like you went through a lot. Like I remember that podcast you did with Ari where like you were very vulnerable. You told the world what you're trying to go through and you put yourself on blast, and now you have to actually perform, because if you don't perform, now they're going to call you out in a year and say, haha, heard you on that podcast say you want to do that and you didn't. That's how. And then also to answer your question even more specifically is I just did it. My wife's always said, you are the best when you put yourself on blast on stage. Like when you say you're going to do something, you go to social media doing it, because now you're just looking. It's almost a psychological thing where you're looking for the hater. You're looking for the person in 17 days to be like, hey, you still doing 75 hard? And I almost want to text them back and be like, you asking because you love me? Or are you asking because you think I failed and you want to diss me? That's what I think. I don't say that. But that's why I put myself on blast, because I want to be accountable. And some people say, just if you want to be accountable, throw it out there for the world to see. Throw it on a podcast, throw it on YouTube, throw it on social media, throw it out to some friends. And I think the more people you go and tell your, because the alternative to that is you have a goal. Many people do. They don't tell anybody the goal. Therefore, the only person they're disappointed with, because no one knows, the only person that's disappointed with them is themselves. And you're actually the most important. Because if you go to bed not confident, then that doesn't feel good. And if you don't wake up confident, that's not good. So I think there's a lot of people who they got a goal. They don't tell anyone, not even their spouse. And then so when they don't perform on it the next day, no one knows. Therefore, like they're just disappointed in themselves. No one else knows. No one else. But like right now with like 75 hard, the day I've got the world and all of my friends that know I'm doing it. So anytime I went to Mexican food restaurant with my wife, chips and salsa right there. And I told her, hey, just put those over there on your side. Why? Because I will just pick it up naturally. Yeah. And I'll just like literally, yeah. So I'm like, hey, just put it over there. And so, but the whole time I'm looking at those chips and salsa and I'm like, someone bring me a steak because I'm getting ready to murder these chips and salsa, right? But I knew the whole time if I didn't do that, like But now I put myself on blast with everybody. So therefore, every time I wanted to put a chip, like every time I wanted to like have the chips and salsa, I thought, oh man, like, is this worth Ari hitting me up tomorrow and being like, hey, what day are you on? I'm like, bro, the chips and salsa got me. And I look at everything right now, the temptation, I look at it as the enemy. And I'm like, is that worth me telling Ari? Like, I got to go tell Ari that the red vines got me. Like the red vines took over. Like the 45-year-old.
Come on, bro. The red 40.
The red vines got me.
But I like that you say that, because I think psychologically people are more wired to not want to disappoint someone else rather than themselves. And so when you say your goals out loud, I think you have a much higher odd end result of like hitting them. And a lot of people will hoard their goals because they're like, oh, I don't want other people to know what I'm up to, evil eye, bad intentions, whatever. And then the other set of people will hoard their goals and not tell anyone because they're afraid of failure, right? They're afraid of not following through on their goal and then having others view them as a failure, or having others view them as not one with their word. But I think it's so important to say the goals out loud. Like anytime, I'll give you an example. I'm working on building out modules for my team, right? That way they have pre-recorded videos of, just real estate and how to be a better agent, right? And I told them on a team call, guys, I'm going to have the modules done within the next 2 weeks. They're going to be uploaded. And the reason why I'm telling you guys this right now is so you can all hold me accountable. Because if I don't do it, I'm not one with my word, right? And I intentionally do that. And I intentionally show up to the gym and post my workouts. And I intentionally tell my goals to my friends so, they can hold me accountable. And I think that's really important. That's part of why it's also important to have mentors, because people will have the lone wolf mentality of like, oh, I'll just get it done myself. But it's very easy to not keep the word for yourself. But it's harder when you tell someone you're going to do it and you don't do it. So I think that's really, really important. I love that you say that. So like anyone who's listening to this podcast, like genuinely, if you have a goal, tell it to someone and have, both of you hold each other accountable on whatever it is.
Yeah, the accountability is huge. And I think just like reverse engineering, like reverse math. And then I also typically when I'm going through something where I'm trying to because there's logic to a goal and there's emotion. So like logically eating healthy is easy. Like counting your macros, that's simple, right? Emotionally to make the decision every day to do it is hard. And so I look when I'm making my goals, I always think logically on paper right here, this is how you logically make this much money. You got to do these actions. Logically, this is how you'd get in shape. You got to do these macros. But then I sit there for the most time, and it's not the logic of it, because the logic is simple. I sit there for an hour on my back patio, and I think of the emotions. So when I thought about doing 75 hard, I thought, oh, well, this is, logically, this is easy. Work out 45 minutes a day, 4 hours apart, one has to be outdoors, 10 pages, gallon of water. Nothing about that is hard. Doing all that one day might be hard around a busy schedule, but it's not hard. Doing all that's not hard. What's hard is I sit there for an hour and I say, Friday night, I'm getting invited to go out with my friends. What am I going to do? Sunday, I'm chilling and I'm watching the football game. Oh man, I normally go out and I go do this with these people. So now am I going to not go with those people? Or when I go with those people, what am I going to eat? And then I'm looking at the menu already and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is where we normally go. So what could I eat there? Okay, well, I could have that steak now instead of this because now this would stay in my macros. And okay, we have this trip coming up. Oh man, that's going to be 4 days. I'm going to Dallas in 2 weeks. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm in Dallas. This is normally what I would do when I'm on vacation. But this is now, let me plan that out. This is what I'm going to do. So it's almost like I already am preloading the emotion. So instead of me being in Dallas, super hungry because I got out of a convention, I almost don't make the bad choice because I've already preloaded the emotion. So I sat there and preloaded everything. So logically, it was all easy. No one's not completing things in life because of the logic. They know what to do. We're not completing it because the human emotion to do it with a lot of stuff going on, your energy gets low. You start making bad decisions because you're just drained. And so I'm starting to that's how that's everything from it's always the logic of get to the goal. What's the emotions? What am I going to have to give up if I'm trying to buy this many houses or recruit this many agents or go through 75 hard? Here's all the things that I'm going to be tempted with. And most people I think would look at it and be like, I'm going to pray these temptations go away. And I'm like, no, I'm a realist. Those temptations are coming. Therefore, how am I going to respond to that when they do? And if I think about it now and I have the answer, then when I get in the moment, I've already prepared for the game. And so I'm not there at the Suns game in the box with a lot of things around me. And I'm like, no, I ate my meal prep before so that I actually was never hungry there. I preloaded the emotion because I'm like, I only want to eat a lot of things here because I'm hungry. So I'm going to go and eat a really, really nice steak at a nice place before I go. And I'm still reward myself with the right reward. I'm still getting a steak at a nice place. And then I'm going to go to the game. And then now sit there for an hour and a half or two, enjoy the conversations. And when the nachos come on, I'll be like, bro, I'm actually not even hungry. Like, I actually would eat those, but I already knew a month ago when I planned this, like, I'm not even hungry. Therefore, I don't even want that
So
decision.
you were proactive versus reactive. And
100.
it's interesting because everyone has the good voice in their head and they have the bad voice. And usually the good voice is the logical one and the bad voice is the emotional one. And I love the concept of like preloading them. It's almost like an objection handler, right? You're on a sales call, like we practice our scripts, right? When lead says this and gives us this objection, we say this, right? We already know because we've thought of ahead of time. And so we need to do the same thing with our goals because the bad voice is going to kick in, the emotion's going to kick in, and the excuses are going to kick in. So what are you going to say when those excuses happen? When the cheeseburger's in front of you and you know you shouldn't be eating it, or when the French fries that are marinated in seed oils are in front of you and you know you shouldn't be eating it. It's like, what are you going to tell yourself? Because your emotional side of your brain is going to be like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'm enjoying myself. Like, I ate clean all week. Like, I can do it. Or they're going to say, you know what? It's just a one-time thing. I'm hanging out with friends. But like, you need to have those objection handlers in your brain to object your own emotional thoughts preloaded. And that's really the way you like get through it. I love that concept a ton. So it's cool that you also do that because I do the same thing.
It's what I love about this conversation is like, this is a real estate podcast, but what's the most interesting thing, bro, is like, I have probably 5 people around me right now that are like doing like very well in real estate. These are the conversations we have, meaning we didn't once talk about really too much about, like, you talked about some of your deals that fell through but didn't tell me the details, and there's a bunch of stuff going on in your life right now with real estate. But I think what I would like for more people to know is the people around me right now that are selling a lot of real estate and living really big lives, this is how they talk. Like, this is how they talk behind the scenes. I've did enough podcasts with people. I have enough friends that are like doing really well in real estate. This is how they talk. It's like almost their framework of their mind. And some people are asking the wrong questions. They're like, how did you get 14 pending? And I'm like, ask him who he had to become. Don't ask him like, oh, you want to know like, oh, he did open house, he did expireds. Yes, that is true. But don't ask him how he got that. Ask him who he had to become to get that. And so like, that's the important thing. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation. I think it came out exactly the way I wanted to, because I always say people earn a seat on a podcast because of their flex. Like, you earned a seat there because of the 14 transactions that you had pending when you posted. That's why I called you here, or that's why I had you here. But I wanted people to realize that we just didn't talk about, you got invited here for the 14, but I wanted people to know the inside of Ari's mind so they know like, oh my gosh, he has 14 and we really don't even know why. We don't even know how.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's your framework and your mindset of how you process the day. And I think that that's something that could be noted. And as I say that, I have a lot of things to work on in my life, as I'm sure you do. And so, but we're always, I feel like the second I figure something out, the next thing, like, I have no chill in these arenas. Like, the second I figure out something and I feel confident, I just find my next insecurity. And someone's like, are you just going to do this your whole life? And I'm like, yep. I'll probably be on my deathbed with like, I don't know, I probably need to work on this. It's just naturally who I am to wake up in the day and not look at anything cool and just be like, no, I need to work on that. And so when someone's like, hey, why is this stacking up for you? I just like, because I don't want to look at any of the old stuff. Like, today is a new day and I'm not good at this. I want to get good at this. And it just, you almost always look like a rookie. You almost always look like you're just judging yourself. And I'm like, and I don't think everyone's wired that way. But I'm also, everyone's not going to get 14 pending, right? So just like figure it out. If that's what you want, this is who you got to become.
True. And people will ask, well, what do you have to do to become successful? Like, how do you have 14 deals pending? And it's not what I do. It's what I don't do. It's like, I don't drink. I don't smoke. I usually don't skip work. I'm going to say usually because everyone needs a recovery day, right? Like, I don't watch Netflix. I don't waste time.
So what do you say for all the people who have uber successful businesses but do all of that stuff?
Well, I think they found a great way to manage their time. Like that's all it is. And so right now, I'm just doubling down on my business, right? Like that's just the stage of life I'm in. Like I'm not saying I'll never watch Netflix. Like eventually, one day I'll have a wife and she's going to want to spend some quality time watching Netflix. Sure, let's do it, right? But right now, I'm just in the stage of my life where I'm doubling down on my business. And some people have gotten past that stage and some people are still on that stage, but they found ways to balance, you know, I don't want to call them vices, but they found ways to balance, the good things in their life and pleasure, right? And that's awesome. And I still have my own, ways of pleasure. Like I went out with my family last night, like we got dinner, right? And then, before that, I went to the Phoenix Open. Did I drink? Hell no. But I still went there. I had a good time, right? So it just comes down to time management. That's all it is. And, making sacrifices at times, right? So like I look at everything like a meter. Okay, like my fitness is here, my business is here, right? So 2 nights ago, I was up till 1 a.m. working on my business, knowing that I'm not going to be able to make it to the gym in the morning. But like I consciously made that decision and made that sacrifice because I have the ability to. I'm not overweight. I'm not fat. If I were fat right now, I would be sacrificing a little bit more of my business, double down on my health. So for everyone, it's going to be different. Like if I had a poor relationship with my family right now, I'd be doubling down on time spent with them rather than my business. So like you just got to know like when to pull forward, when to pull back, because it's not always going to be, sunshine and rainbows to where like 8 a.m. I do this, 9 a.m. I do this, 10 a.m. I do this, 8 p.m. is my leisure time. Like it's not always going to be like that. And at least for business owners. And so I've learned to know when to push forward and when to pull back based on like what's best for me in the current moment. So I think people just need to be able to balance that correctly, but also never lose sight, because some people will push forward too hard on business and 2 years go by and they've gained 40 pounds. And it's like, you should have known to pull back a little bit when you gain 10 pounds. Like that should have been already a sign. So yeah, I think part of that maybe people value money too much. Like, I value money. It's a tool, but money ain't shit if you're fat and you have bad relationships, right? So every aspect of the life has to be dialed.
Yeah, I like that I've known Ari in this zone. I've only known Ari in this zone, but that's what I'm so thankful for our friendship moving forward is like there is going to be that's the coolest thing about, and especially the biggest thing about just being vocal, like when you're doing a podcast or you're on social, like you're putting a lot out there, right? And so like there's going to be a new version of you when you're 30, like you said, when you're married and have 2 kids, you might be the dude now, like your kid might be so into basketball and like all of a sudden now like you're at the basketball game with your kid, but like you might be there though from a different angle of like, I'm here because of the love with my kid and that's what he likes to do. And I'm not,
It comes back to the intention.
Like
I said this on
what I meant. Like,
yeah, I said this on my story the other day. It's like, if you're going to spend hours like watching the Super Bowl, like why are you doing that? Did you have like a bunch of friends over, family? Like, are you just trying to spend quality time with them? Or
watched it with
you just so focused on like the players and their stats and like
you're
it all comes out of that.
That day you were texting me some stuff on that and I was like, your story was out and I messaged you because I think I did fire on it. I was like, that's fire. And I did fire while I'm watching the game by myself. You know what I mean? Like my wife was like meal prepping. I'm just watching. She's not even watching. I'm watching the game. And I looked at your story and I was like, dude, that is such fire. Fire hearted it just so you got both. I was like, this is his currency. Fire, heart, while I'm sitting there. You know what I want to say though on that? And then we're going to wrap up is because I respect you where I'm like, there's another person who was like, oh, Ari being judgmental again. They message you, Ari, what do you mean? And I looked at it like, no, I know where his heart is. Like, I know where he's at. And actually, I get it. And I was actually thinking, I probably should go on another ruck right now on halftime, right? I don't know. I think that me going on a ruck was probably better than watching the Kendrick Lamar. Is that who it was?
I don't know, dude.
Is that who it is?
I had no idea. I didn't watch a second.
Okay. But so the point is when I saw that, I was inspired by it, even though I was watching the game kind of by myself. My wife was meal prepping. But what are, as we're wrapping up, thanks for not talking a ton of real estate with me.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Oh, dude. Of course.
Okay.
I have more passion about talking
Okay.
self-development rather than real estate. And I think self-development relates to everyone, and it's just more pleasurable for me to talk about. Like I'm not going to talk about intricacies of a Benzer or a house. That's boring. I do it to help my clients, but like self-development is absolutely vital, like for anyone. And I have so much passion about talking
Okay.
about that. So
Cool. Because it was like 2 weeks ago where I was talking to somebody and I was like, you know what? You get on the podcast because of what you've accomplished, but then you talk for an hour to talk about your pain of how you got there. And so you got on here because of what you're accomplishing. You're doing really cool stuff. I'm always super proud of you. Like 21-year-old Ari is doing special stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing you grow. I'm thankful we talked about fat Ari so that people know that you overcame something that you're super proud of. And so now every time I see your Instagram, not only will I be inspired, but I'm also going to be like, no, dude, that kid's actually not only inspiring, he's also proud of himself. And I think you're seeing someone who on Instagram right now, like he's super proud of himself. Like he knows where he was at. He knows where he's going. And if anybody wants to holler at him and be like, hey, you're annoying, I'm like, maybe we should just give him love and be like, hey, props on taking care of yourself, right? Because you knew you were a version you didn't want to be. And you said, I want to be 21-year-old Ari that's doing cool stuff. And here you are. It takes a lot of work. So how can people follow you?
yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, ari.jakubov, or on Facebook or wherever you'll find me. I'm probably the only Ari Jakubov in the world, so not that hard to find me.
I appreciate, man. We have some of the most transparent conversations. I think people we know each other pretty well. I think somebody just got the insight if they were like, "Hey, what do you guys talk about when you're at lunch?" We just turned on the mic and just this is exactly how we talk at lunch. It's almost always on goals, what we're trying to do, how we're trying to be better, and that's why I always want to go to lunch with you, dude. So people just got the insight. I appreciate you.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.